All right, let's get into week one of the NFL season. And here's the thing that everybody needs to understand when week one rolls around. The bad teams, they don't know they're bad yet. This is an unknown thing that not enough people talk about. They don't think about this. Bad teams find out they're bad about 6 weeks into the season. Everyone thinks they're good right now. So you get everybody's best shot early on in the season. You think these games that should go one way or the other, why are they so close? Nobody knows they suck yet. Eventually, that will sink in. So that's why you get some very surprisingly close games week one of the season. And we'll get to all of that a little bit later. But the biggest takeaway so far in week one is that the Colts were justified in what they did in naming Daniel Jones the starter. Now, I tried to tell you that a long time ago in the summer when it was headed this way, and nobody wanted to believe it. They wanted to believe the talent of Anthony Richardson, the athleticism, the strength, the quickness. Didn't matter. Daniel Jones was the right decision, and that bore fruit Sunday in Indianapolis.
So for the second straight day, very unsurprising news that Daniel Jones and not Anthony Richardson is going to be the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. Look, I told you back in June that all signs indicated that Daniel Jones was going to win this job because of the health concerns for Anthony Richardson and the fact that he hasn't played well. And let's just be honest, okay? Anthony Richardson was last in the league in completion percentage last year, last in the league in passer rating, and last in the league in touchdown to interception ratio. I hear a lot of people out there saying, well, they're not giving him a chance. This has been the mismanagement of Anthony Richardson. No, it's really been the mismanagement of the draft pick. He never should have been the fourth overall pick in the 2023 draft. He only played 13 games in college, and his stats were very mediocre. Everybody fell in love with his athleticism and the things he could do. He just wasn't a very good quarterback, and he hasn't proven to be a very good quarterback in the NFL yet. So Anthony Richardson is on the bench as Daniel Jones is now the starter for the season for the Indianapolis Colts.
Daniel Jones did something Sunday that hadn't happened in the NFL since 1991. It hadn't happened this century. He went 7 for 7. Every drive he had on the field, he led the Colts to points. Okay, and understand something. If you take a knee at the end of the half, that constitutes the end of a drive you didn't score. If you throw one away when the game is out of control in the fourth quarter and that halts a drive, that counts. Daniel Jones was perfect. 7 for 7. And when I say no quarterback has done that this century, this is what I'm trying to tell you. That means Drew Brees never did it. Tom Brady never did it. Peyton Manning never did it. Aaron Rodgers never did it. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, none of those guys have ever done what Daniel Jones did on Sunday. And yes, we got a new nickname for Daniel Jones, Indiana Jones. I'm not suggesting that Daniel Jones has suddenly found quarterback heaven and nirvana and all this peaches and cream for the rest of the season. I'm just saying we need to acknowledge what he did that no one else has been able to do. And oh, by the way, on top of that, the other thing Daniel Jones did, he ended the longest winless streak in week one of the regular season active in the NFL. The Colts had gone 11 straight week ones without a win, 0-10-1 over that time frame. That was more than twice as long as any other team actively in the NFL, a drought they had without winning week one. He goes in there and gets the job done, and Shane Steichen's got to be feeling a little better about himself because that's exactly what had to happen. So Daniel Jones does something we haven't seen this century, dating back to 1991. He ends the Colts' 11-season winless streak. They had one tie in there in week one, and he is absolutely magical. So it's all thumbs up for Indianapolis after week one. The other side of that game, though, is the Miami Dolphins. And the Miami Dolphins, I think, are in for a long season. Look, we used to do this segment on NFL Live called Overreaction Monday. They still do it, giving Eric Mangini and myself no credit, by the way, for coming up with that segment. But you can have overreactions, obviously, because, look, the Chiefs 2 years ago lost the season opener and then went on to win the Super Bowl. Okay, so it happens back-to-back. You don't put too much stock into results. I put more stock in what I see. The Miami Dolphins look terrible. Okay, this is a team that traded away Jalen Ramsey and got older with Minka Fitzpatrick. They traded away their all-pro tight end, Jonnu Smith, who, by the way, flourished for Aaron Rodgers in his debut with the Pittsburgh Steelers, which we will get to. And Miami thought they'd bring and solve that tight end position by taking Darren Waller out of retirement. He was inactive today. All of this to say Miami looked awful. But their entire offseason has been awful. And you have to wonder if the rope for Mike McDaniel is coming up pretty short pretty quickly. They looked flat. They had no answers for Daniel Jones. Again, Indiana Jones or Daniel Jones. They had no answers for Daniel Jones for a team that hadn't won on week one in forever. 2013 was the last time they had a week one win. This was an embarrassing performance for Miami, and I'm not sure it's going to get any better. There were shots of Tyreek Hill visibly frustrated on the sidelines. And let's talk about that for a second. Tyreek Hill was not named captain this year after being captain last year. Obviously, he had the remarks at the end of the season he wanted out of there. All of this seems like it's a bubbling, gigantic mess for the Miami Dolphins. So I'm not crowning Indianapolis after this win. I'm just pointing out some statistical things that went well for Daniel Jones, and it proved, by the way, why he should be the starter. But Miami looks like a mess, and I'm not sure there's a cavalry coming. Remember, Mike McDaniel started meetings last year 24 minutes early because it had been 24 years since they won a playoff game. Let me tell you something. That shit never works, okay? The late, great former Dolphins coach, Tony Sperano, once after a really bad film, went out and took a football and said, you know what? This football represents how bad we played this week. We're just going to bury it and forget about it. That doesn't work either. That kind of rah-rah stuff just never goes over. I guarantee you, when coaches pull things like that, there's a lot of this going on in the meeting room. Really? Really? So the whole 24-minute thing, that's not going to work. It does feel like nothing's going to get better for Miami. And by the way, if they turn it around and have a banner season, I will be the first to say I was wrong. But I do not think I am in this situation. Kudos for the Colts and the way they got it done. Kudos to Daniel Jones. And really, it looks like it's going to be a long, miserable season for Miami. Another thing that we need to point out, and something that's been going on this entire week one, has been that the greatest rule change the NFL has made in the last 20 years has been moving the extra point back. Look, it used to be a non-play. It was a 98, 96% completion percentage or success rate. It was a non-play. And then you have people blocking. Rob Gronkowski broke his arm once blocking on an extra point for the New England Patriots. It's like, why is he even in there? It's an automatic play. When they moved that kick, the extra point, back to 33 yards, it wreaked havoc. Look at what it did for the Colts game for the Chargers game against the Chiefs. Harrison Butker missed an extra point. So what happens? The next time down, after the Chiefs score a touchdown, they have to chase the two, and they don't get the two. And then the Chargers go up, so now they're up by 2 scores. It changed the complete dynamic of the game. And we saw that play out also in other week one games. We saw the young kicker, Andre Schmidt, although it doesn't look like it's spelled that way for the Cleveland Browns, he missed an extra point. He missed an extra point in a 1-point game. He also missed a field goal that was well within his range. So in a 1-point game, the kicker missed an extra point and a field goal. Otherwise, we'd be talking about potentially the Bengals once again losing a September game. This is the first time in 3 seasons Cincinnati hasn't started 0-2 or worse to begin the season, simply because the kicker for Cleveland couldn't keep it in the stadium. It was ridiculous. And oh, by the way, all those people saying, why is Joe Flacco starting? Joe Flacco, you saw why he should have been starting. He put them in a position to win the game. The kicker just didn't come through. And I don't want to hear about 2 interceptions, because you go look at that second interception. He hit the receiver in the hands. We need a new statistical category for interceptions that go on the receiver, not on the quarterback. And I've said this forever about all quarterbacks throughout the league. So don't give me, oh, you're just propping up Joe Flacco. I've said this for a long time. We need interceptions that are on the quarterback, and we need interceptions that are on the receivers. And that one was absolutely on the receivers' hands, and that's why the Browns, once again, came up short. I don't know how Cleveland fans do it. I mean, honestly, you have my sympathy. You had the Bengals at your place. You should have won that game, but you didn't execute on the simplest of plays. And oh, by the way, the extra point thing, let's take it one step further. Let's go to the divisional game between the Bucs and the Falcons. Now, the Falcons had a chance to tie that game late. Why? Because Chase McLaughlin missed an extra point, okay? They go down there and score. He makes a great throw to that young wide receiver, catches it. They kick the extra point. It's a 4-point game. It's a 4-point game. They up 24-20, so they can't. A field goal won't tie it. They have to go for the touchdown. He misses the extra point, and it keeps them in play. So this extra point maneuver, again, one of the greatest decisions the NFL has ever made, and we see it time and time again, how if you don't execute a 33-yard extra point, which is essentially a gimme field goal these days. I mean, Chris Boswell hit a 60-yarder today for the Steelers on the road to make sure they got out of there with the win. So a 33-yard extra point basically should not be what it is, should not be as problematic. It's the greatest rule change in the last 20 years in the NFL. It kept the Falcons in the game. So you just see this time and time again. Suddenly the extra point is an actual play. A great job by the NFL 10-some years ago, moving that thing back. And we saw it play out several times week one. I also want to talk about situational football, because situational football is knowing exactly what to do in the critical moments of a game. What are critical moments of the game? Third downs, 2-minute drill at the end of the half, end of game possession. How do you deal with it? We saw a couple of examples in the early window on week one that were really problematic. For example, the Washington Commanders were dominating a very poor New York Giants team. And oh, by the way, how about that little exchange between Brian Daboll and Malik Neighbors week one? That doesn't sound good for anybody, but I digress. So Jaden Daniels and the Commanders are up 14-3. And they're down there ready to kick a field goal at the end of the half. We'll put them up 17-3, really put them in solid command. Look, they went on to win the game. It really wasn't much of a threat. I understand that. But this was a chance to really slam the door shut on the Giants right before the half. Go up 14 points and say, take your best shot. So on 3rd and goal, Jaden Daniels, under pressure, sees his tight end Zach Ertz go to the middle. He throws it to the outside where there is no one. There is no one there. So what's the call? That's a penalty, intentional grounding. And that's a runoff on the clock. So the Commanders didn't even get a chance to kick the field goal. If you're going to throw it away, you got to throw it away somewhere where someone is in the vicinity of the ball. That cost the Commanders a chance to take a 14-point lead into the half. They went on to win the game. You got to clean that stuff up. And now let's go back to the end of the game between the Bucs and the Falcons after the missed kick by McLaughlin, giving the Falcons a chance to tie with Byung-Wei Koo, one of the best kickers in the game, which he missed. But there were so many things the Falcons did wrong before that. Some of this, I think, is Michael Penix, the young quarterback who looked good, did some really good things today. But as they were taking that final drive to try and tie the game, here's what happened. They had a couple of timeouts. They used one early. So they had one timeout left. They completed a ball over the middle with 27 seconds left, and they called timeout. When they did that, I was screaming, what are you doing? You just completed it over the middle. You can get that spike done in about 5 or 6 seconds, which would leave you with 21, 22 seconds left, and you preserve the timeout. You preserve the timeout. Instead, they used that timeout with 27 seconds left. That was a bad decision. You want to keep that timeout in your back pocket as long as possible. Then after the timeout on the very next play, what happens? Penix throws it to Bijan Robinson, who is running an out route toward the sidelines, and instead of going out of bounds, he tries to run inbounds and get more yards. Look, time is more valuable than yards at that point. And they eventually got down there and were about to spike it. But wait a minute, they got bailed out. Why? Because Bijan Robinson accidentally stepped out of bounds. He wasn't trying to get out of bounds. His foot grazed the sidelines. He wanted to keep going. So that was a mistake. Now, they got the clock stopped because it went out of bounds, but it was the wrong action. Look, at this point, the results are one thing. You also want the guys to process the information correctly. So Atlanta did couple of things really wrong in that situation. They burned their timeout at the wrong time, and then Bijan Robinson, which he should know by now, he's been in the league far too long to know this, that you need to get out of bounds and preserve time more than anything else to give yourself a couple of shots. Instead of kicking a field goal tie the game. Give yourself a shot in the end zone. Give yourselves a chance to win the game. Because what happened? Younghoe Koo missed a kick. He'll make it 95 times out of 100, maybe 90%. But he missed it. And you cost yourself an opportunity. You cost yourself an opportunity to have a chance to win the game in regulation instead of kick potentially a game-tying field goal and send it into overtime. And they didn't do that right anyway. Situational football matters. It will lose you games. It will win you games. The Commanders need to clean that up. The Falcons absolutely need to clean that up as well. It cost them a chance to win the game against the Tampa Bay Bucks at home. Finally, week 1, Aaron Rodgers balls out. 4 touchdown passes against his old team, the Jets. And I was talking to a couple people this week, and I was like, the surest bet in the world is that somehow Aaron Rodgers, who has struggled week 1 the last 4 or 5 years, go look at the numbers. I put them up on a tweet. A lot of things have gone wrong, including, 6 snaps into his Jets career. He blows out his Achilles a couple of years ago in 2023. You knew he was going to go back there with a chip on his shoulder. And he went back there with a big one. Throws 4 touchdown passes, including one to Jonnu Smith, whom the Steelers got as an all-pro tight end from Miami. I still have no idea why Miami traded him away. But Aaron Rodgers went back there with a chip on his shoulder. And the most interesting post-game press conference, one of the reporters asked him, what did it feel like to beat Aaron Glenn, who basically told you, we don't want you here. We do not want you here in the Jets organization. Aaron Rodgers stopped for a second and said, I'm happy to beat everybody associated with the Jets. This meant something to him, and I appreciate his honesty right there. Look, I have no idea how strong the Steelers are going to be this season, but Aaron Rodgers threw 4 touchdown passes and sent a message to his old team that he still has something left in the chamber. And the Jets, look, they got a decent game from Justin Fields, but the Jets, no heartbreak. This is what happens to them, and they saw Aaron Rodgers come in and do something to them that he almost never did for them when he was the quarterback of the Jets. A lot of us thought that with the addition of Micah Parsons, the Green Bay Packers would be a very difficult team for people to contend with in the NFC, and the Detroit Lions found that out the hard way in person week 1. The Packers finally ended a 3-game home losing streak to Detroit. The Lions had won the last 3 times they'd gone up there, but this time it wasn't even close. The Packers were judicious with the ball, and they bullied the Detroit Lions. Keep in mind, this is a Detroit Lions team that won 15 games a year ago. They were 7-2 in one-possession games. They just found a way to get it done. But what did we talk about with the Lions before the season began? We talked about them having to deal with erosion. The last 2 years, they've done very well with expectations. But this year, they had to deal with erosions. What do I mean by erosions? Loss of players and loss of coaches. Not only did they lose their 2 coordinators, Aaron Glenn's now the head coach of the Jets. Ben Johnson gets his head coaching debut on Monday Night Football for the Bears against the Vikings. But they lost a bunch of position coaches as well that went to both of those staffs. Then you add in the entire sort of makeover and reshift of the offensive line, which had been such a stalwart for the Lions the last couple of years. And that showed up in this game. They really could get nothing going early. It was only a late touchdown, a spectacular touchdown by Isaiah Tesla that really put them in the end zone. The Packers bullied. They bullied the Detroit Lions. And this was not something that the Lions under Dan Campbell had been used to. Jordan Love didn't turn the ball over, which was significant. Josh Jacobs, 9th straight game, scoring a touchdown. And then, of course, at the end of the game, Micah Parsons comes through with a pursue sack, which is something Dallas lacked miserably in the Thursday night season opener against the Eagles. This was a Green Bay team that was clicking on all cylinders. And if you get Josh Jacobs running the ball well, if you get Jordan Love not turning the ball over, and then you get Micah Parsons added to that defense, which has plenty of playmakers on it before he got there, this is going to be a very difficult team, not only for everybody in the NFC North, but everybody in the NFC, including the defending champion, Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, to deal with. Jordan Love, Micah Parsons, and that team with Matt LaFleur made a statement on Sunday. And that statement was, we are now the team to beat in what should be a very talented NFC North. Meanwhile, the Lions have got to figure out some things quickly because the formula for success they've had over the last couple of years was not on display this Sunday afternoon at Lambeau Field. Another big win in the late window Sunday was the Rams taking care of the Texans 14-9. Now listen, this is not going to be a game that's going to win a lot of artistic merit awards from anybody, but it was significant in a couple of ways. First of all, what did we hear all summer long? Well, Matthew Stafford's back. We need to be careful with his back. We need to make sure we take care of him. We need to make sure that he doesn't do anything to strain it. And that was a big concern for me going into the season. Matthew Stafford is 37 years old. He's going into his 17th season. I don't want to hear about back issues if that's my franchise quarterback, but he was solid today. He was 21 of 29 for 245 yards and a touchdown pass. And more importantly, they actually used him as a quarterback sneak at the goal line. It wasn't successful. They eventually scored on that series, but I'm not sure I want to keep that in the playbook, Sean McVay, if I'm you. Everything else looked great, though. His back looked like it was going to hold up. Puka Nacua had to leave this game because he had a cut on his forehead. It looked like it was bleeding into his eye. But listen, Puka Nacua was Puka Nacua. He was targeted 11 times. He had 10 catches for 130 yards, averaged 13 yards per catch, including basically a game winner. When they needed a first down to run out the clock, Stafford hit Puka Nacua, who stayed in bounds. Situational football, we talked about that before, stayed in bounds, and that basically allowed the Rams to go into victory formation. As for the Texans, it was a little bit of a struggle here. C.J. Stroud, 19 of 27, no touchdowns, an interception, and a late fumble by Ogunbowale that really cost them a chance to win. It was a really wild sequence. Towards the end of that game, the Rams are going for what would have been a go-ahead game-clinching score, put them up by 2 scores. They fumbled. That put the Texans back in it, and later on that drive, the Texans fumbled as well. Situational football. Can't fumble late. Got to know when to stay in bounds. Got to know when to get out of bounds. But most importantly, if you're a Rams fan, Matthew Stafford looked like Matthew Stafford. And by the way, congratulations to Matthew as he becomes the second fastest quarterback in NFL history to get 60,000 passing yards. It looks like he is far from done. And then, of course, the other late game, we had the Denver Broncos take care of the Tennessee Titans 20-12. And a couple of things to note about that game, which I find very interesting. First and foremost is the idea that every team in the AFC West won this week except the Kansas City Chiefs, who have won that division 7 straight years and have been the representative of the AFC in the last 3 Super Bowls, winning 2, losing obviously to the Philadelphia Eagles, whom they'll play, by the way, at home in Week 2. A very big Week 2 matchup for Kansas City and Philadelphia. We'll get to that later. It was also the debut for rookie quarterback Cam Ward, the number overall pick of the Tennessee Titans. Look, he's got an electric arm. He had some amazing throws in this game, but you're going to see the struggles from him. In this game, he was only 12 of 28, a completion percentage of under 43%. We saw the big throws. We saw the arm strength throws. But those never win in the NFL. What wins in the NFL are the chain mover throws. The 3rd and 6 on the flat route. The third and 7 on a sluggo, slant and go, or a skinny post to keep the chains moving. In fact, he had a chance late in that game on a 3rd down where there was a receiver wide open, and if he'd just taken a couple of miles per hour off the fastball, that throw was there to keep that drive alive. That was a 3rd and 11 play, I believe, when it was still a 1-score game, a 1-possession game, or 1-point game, rather. Those are the kind of throws that are going to take time. We saw the arm strength from Cam. We didn't see the touch. And why is touch important? Well, a couple years ago when Joe Flacco had to start the season for the Jets when Zach Wilson got hurt, Garrett Wilson said the quiet part out loud that no one really noticed at the time. They asked him, hey, how's it going to be adjusting from Zach Wilson to Joe Flacco? And he said, well, Joe has all the throws. He has all the touch. He can make everything. I'm not concerned, which was basically Garrett Wilson's way of saying Zach hasn't learned that yet. And that's the hardest part for a lot of these quarterbacks that come out of college with a big arm, big rep. They expect to make every play. They need to know that not everything needs to be 103-mile-an-hour fastball chin music, okay? Sometimes the off-speed pitch works. Sometimes you need to throw a little slider in there. Sometimes a little backdoor curve. These pitches, these kind of throws are the things that these young quarterbacks sometimes need a little time to learn. Cam Ward will learn that, but overall, it's a decent performance, but he's got to learn that not everything can be high heat in the NFL. Sometimes touch is more important than arm strength. And again, the only team without a win week 1 in the AFC West, the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, so what did we say earlier? That it was obviously going to be Joe Flacco at starting quarterback for the Browns this season. And it was obviously going to be Daniel Jones at starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. Why? Well, not only were they their best option, which we saw on display in week 1, but both those coaches needed to win. They need to win to keep their jobs. Shane Steichen needs to win to keep his job. Kevin Stefanski, even though he's a 2-time Coach of the Year, probably needs to win this year to keep his job. So what was the most interesting thing coming out of week 1? Brian Daboll already wavering on his commitment to Russell Wilson, saying after the week 1 loss to the Commanders, he's not yet committed to Russell Wilson being the starting quarterback. This is what we call panic in September. Listen, are you going to go to, if you move on, are you going to go to Jameis Winston? Or are you going to go to Jackson Dart, who they moved back up into the first round to get, the kid out of Mississippi that looked really good? But this is Brian Daboll knowing that last year he might have gotten a pass for everything that went on. He's not getting that pass this year. And that's Brian Daboll telling you if he's not committing to Russell Wilson, who didn't play great, I want to be clear. But, week 1, when you're already thinking about making a quarterback change, that tells you that the head coach knows that the organization is also probably thinking about making a change, and that change starts with the head coach. Let's add into the fact that we talked about that little sideline interaction with Malik Neighbors, walked away from a high five from Brian Daboll, didn't seem real interested in having a conversation. I'm not saying that's all on Brian Daboll. A lot of that's probably on Malik Neighbors, but the fact that it exists in any way, shape, or form is the bigger issue. No matter whose fault it is, the fact that it's there, and it was a very public rift for everybody to see. So you combine that with Daboll already wavering on his commitment to Russell Wilson to be a starting quarterback week 2, it's getting late early for the New York Football Giants and Brian Daboll. And that's straight facts, homie.